Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the post-Worlds edition of Reaction Time. The season is over. Duh, duh, duh. Um, we we've seen a championship. We have seen Edward Gaming crowned world champions in 5 games,
Who,
as you on this podcast.
who could have thunk it?
Steve Garrett, first and foremost.
the true LPL connoisseur,
So
the most knowledgeable
here is
Edward Gaming fanboy.
Eric and I watched the games together, with friend of the program Doug, whose prediction on his record was 3-2 Damwon. So we had the spread of predictions across the way here, and by the time we get to game 5, Doug says to us, "I kind of want Damwon to win just so Steven's wrong." Uh, and it did not come to pass.
Foolish.
Here's another snippet of behind the scenes for you. Steven comes talking into our planning channel for this, talking all this noise. And I say to him now, as I said to him then, buy merch or you're not real, coward.
Link me now in Discord. I'll buy live on stream.
I can't read Mandarin,
Me either.
or I would help you more.
Tweet this out.
I truly wish I could. LPL teams need to.
Tweet this
If you
episode
can-
to ADG so they know that your boy
you
is
can-
here.
If you can read Mandarin, post a link for buying EDG merch in the chat below.
Oh God, this website is.
Very
So
Mandarin.
I'm on the EDG website right now. I don't know what any of this says.
Google Translate quickly. Help.
I'm just gonna start clicking on links.
Oh man. But I was just sitting there and watching.
That's a Taobao link. I can't actually do anything with that.
Game 4 had me bugging. Heckin' nervous.
So let's go from the top. EDG spanks game 1.
Yeah, they do.
We correctly call. They leave LeBlanc open. They willingly take Scout's Rise into it. It goes according to plan.
Scout
Dom
actually
one.
wins lane.
Dom
Scout
one.
actually. Okay.
Dom 1 leaves open the Jarvan. JJ pops off on the Jarvan. Again. Scott wins lane. And what else we got?
Mako plays the Curia counter pick into the pick comp, which is the support Zillion. And it works according to plan.
And then there's Khan's top Yasuo, which I believe at least one of us called Yasuo making an appearance in this series. So we checked a whole bunch of boxes in game 1. The top Yasuo was unimpressive.
But this is why you should like and subscribe and follow the reaction time, because we actually are competent and know what we're talking about. Factually proven in reality.
Minor stretch, but close enough.
So then to hit the dialogue for you, EDG comfortably wins with these picks, and the J4 looks really good. And I'm like, just like I said on this podcast, you have to ban the Jarvan. Tom 1 bans the Jarvan in first round picks for the rest of the series. I will take that. I didn't call this series right, but I will take that right now. And then Dom 1 reels off 2 back-to-back wins in games 2 and 3. Did we have the Malzahar pick coming out?
In essence, in saying that both teams have an answer to LeBlanc, and they both did.
Because this was the flip side, right? Is Scout takes the LeBlanc, Showmaker takes Malzahar into it.
The
Dom
smite
the win in this side.
was a question mark.
A part of the problem with game 2 is that, in addition to the Malzahar into LeBlanc matchup, And in this series, unlike the Damwon versus SKT series, the team with the counter pick won lane. It wasn't like you could just like pick something into LeBlanc and the LeBlanc would win lane anyway, which is what was happening against SKT. But in this game, like the bigger thing that fell apart was EDG picked Aurelia top lane into the Graves, and Flandre really suffers when you put him into like a matchup where he needs support in top lane because they are not prepared to play around Flandre in this roster. They're just not.
It's not built for it.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into like my boys EDG should not be picking these basic picks. Like they got wienered on the TF, they got wienered on the Irelia, like they got schooled on the LeBlanc. I'm glad that they pivoted away from the known elements because that's where they were not looking great.
It's almost like picking the Graves away from Flandre. It was a winning move as a part of this series when they did it.
When they did it.
Except in Game 5. We'll get to that, though.
Also, Felios.
We'll get to it. Yeah. So I will also call out in Game 2, we talked about the importance of Canyon's willingness to play the assassin junglers. The Kiana was big in Game 2. Was a huge factor.
And that's why it was banned.
And we also talked about you traded it, you ban the Kiana, you leave open the Lee Sin that has been banned for this whole tournament. Canyon gets Lee Sin in Game 3 and Dumb win the game. Khan plays the Gragas on the weak side of the map and plays weak side to perfection. The thing I thought was most interesting pick ban-wise in Game 3 is we have been critical of the Sylas pick, and it has kind of fallen by the wayside as the tournament has progressed. You look at the team comp that EDG picks, and it's not the dream Sylas comp we saw in play-ins, but Showmaker made the pick work pretty well across the game.
Picking it into the Twisted Fate, like that was the answer, and Sylas has looked the best into Twisted Fate.
Well, and some of the play-in teams were really bad at actually taking Twisted Fate ult before the movement. So like when you see Twisted Fate going to leave the lane, you take the ult, and then like Showmaker did that very well, and then he held on to Twisted Fate ult through plays. So, like, when you'd see EDG engage on one side of the map, sometimes Showmaker didn't even Twisted Fate into the same fight. He'd go to the other side of the map and then win there with the same ultimate. And so it was, like, very clear that they knew exactly how to play that matchup, and they did a fantastic job at that. He was also really good at pressing the Xin Zhao ultimate button, which was really gnarly.
Disgusting. Especially in the range that this team has, because you're Xin Zhaoing against Jace, Twisted Fate, and Jhin. Like, that's a lot of, like, mitigated damage with a kind of, I don't want to say situational ult, because it's pretty good consistently, but if it was a lot of melee, it'd be a different story.
And EDG's comp was so squishy that it's like they can't afford to waste the time moving into range to get through it. They just die, and that's what was happening, is then Canyon would land any ability. Canyon pressed a button on his keyboard and one of them would die, and that was pretty brutal.
The other, while I'm calling out pick ban things in this, Game 3 broke Jin's 6-game winning streak, 6 consecutive wins in the series, because Aphelios got off the bench in some ways, some might say. But the Jhin did finally actually lose a game after looking very good across both semis and the first 2 games of finals. Then Game 4 comes around, and one of the pivot points for the end of this series comes through, which is Scout Lock Zoe. Which is, he plays Game 4, he plays Game 5, and looks phenomenal on. We know it's a pick he's been comfortable with, and this was a huge factor in EDG turning around the 2-1 deficit, I think. Eric, Scout Zoe, pretty good at the game.
Oh, totally. And it was EDG, like, remembering how to play League of Legends their way. They put Flandre on Graves on weak side in Game 4, and then they drafted, like, the most winningest of bot lanes. And it turned out really well.
And they got Kennen in game 5.
Well, and Damwon tried to answer the bot lane thing because they picked away the Nami.
Trash.
Jin Nami is not as good as Lucian Nami.
That's not how you beat that matchup. Like you've always like.
Well, that's the thing is like there's other enchanters you can go to here. They just picked the Lulu, and Lucian Lulu does just fine. Like it was a pick ban gambit that did not work.
No. And it never looked like it. I think that was just the script writers writing in a way out for EDG, because there's a known way to beat the Lucian Nami, and it's just to ban, not to pick away.
The most important thing I learned from Game 4 is that Nami skin should be deleted from League of Legends. It's absolute cancer.
The alt
You can't see it. It's the same color as the ground. What do you do for that? Like, it's like the ground is rising at you, but it's a program? How is that right? No, that's gross. Just get rid of it.
So then, as Steven foreshadows, we go to Game 5. EDG gets the Kennen, which we've talked about as a critical pick for them, and almost more importantly gets this Aphelios pick for the first time this series, which, like, as we look across, it was banned in games 1, 2, and 4, picked by Dom1 in game 3. Dom1 were the ones that chose to leave it open in games 3 and 4, but this was the time EDG finally got to lock it in, and it was Viper's Aphelios. I hope he picks it for the skin. He is magnificent.
He should. It's his character. Isn't that his, like, borderline one trick? Like, I will win if I get this game?
Most picks are like that. Like, personally, I thought his Kiana was more... Or, sorry, not Kiana. Xayah was more just devastating. He could play Kiana bot. Don't worry about it. But, like, it's his Xayah bot lane in LPL was more devastating to me as far as what he could do with the champion as compared to other people.
But in LPL as opposed to in this tournament.
Right. But in this tournament, like the Aphelios was dirty. Watching him flash forward as soon as skill shots were on CD in order to clean up fights, landing sick ults into AoE damage to absolutely slaughter the front line, like... It was something else. It was crazy.
Well, and this, like, the overall narrative here is Scout was picked as the MVP of the series. I don't disagree with that. However, I think this was a case of at least 4 of the 5 players on the EDG roster playing about the best series they've ever played in their lives. At least. Flandre is about the only one I have a question about, and even he stepped it up in games 4 and games 5. But, like, you have iconic moments for Scout, JJ, and Viper across the closing games of this series. Like, I would have voted JJ for the MVP. The job he did on Canyon the whole series was absolutely phenomenal. For that, in case we've forgotten, Reddit brought this up. This dude got benched in the LPL playoffs. Like, this was not a sure thing going into this tournament that this would work, and he just beat arguably the best jungler in the world straight up in a best of 5.
And knew how to do it. Like, his read on Canyon's Talon, like, and just no, okay, we're gonna let him have the Talon, because they kept off the Lee Sin, they kept off the Kiana. They're like, the Talon we can handle, and just like a cheap magazine by the toilet, he knew what to do with that, like, Talon pick, and it was useless in that game, and it was just a masterclass of like tracking the enemy jungler and knowing what his, like, windows of opportunity were.
Yeah, like the EDG narrative is this has been a year of them having all the pieces come together at the right time, because if you look at the roster, JJ was playing for their LDL team as recently as last year. He's their youngest player by far. The rest of them, Scout's been playing Flandre has been playing in the LPL since like 2015. Scout's been in this roster for years. Mako's been in this roster for years. Viper started out with Griffin, who came up in 2019, I want to say. Like, this is players who've been around for a bit. Scout and Mako, who have been with this team for a while at this point.
Seasoned talent.
And the level that they stepped up to across the year I don't think anyone called them coming out of the LPL to begin with at the start of this year. The Flandre signing was a big deal, but like this was not expected from EDG. And then for them to get better and better and better and better, peaking at the time, like at the best time in the world, peaking in Game 5 of the World Championship. That's the dream for a team like this. And it's we talked one of the things we talked about during pause time between games, Eric and I was like, Faker's the best player in the world. Who's the next tier down? And there is a real argument that Mako is among that next tier down with a world championship with his name on it, because the level of consistency has shown for years and years now, capped off with a world championship, is quite the roster or resume. That's what I'm trying to say.
And this is with a Damwon that arguably looked really good. And definitely in this tournament was performing really well. It wasn't like it was like a shaky Damwon, or they like weren't performing at their world championship best. They looked good. And they held their own in this series, and it could have gone either way.
I will also say, as someone who was rooting for Damwon throughout this, that Game 5 pick ban was tragic from them. I'm sorry.
They played themselves. They foolish behavior.
I get that the Ziggs pick worked in the previous series. I get that. That's fine. Canyon Strundle is one of his preferred picks. That's fine. If you just look at these 10 picks, one of these comps is in the meta and one of them is not. I'm sorry. Like, I get some of the ideas of what they were trying to do. I just think there were better options they could have picked here.
So a part of the problem is that, like, I do think Ghost is the best Ziggs player in the world, and he looked phenomenal on that, even in this game with landing AoE abilities and CC. The trick is that they got away with comps like this, these disengaged comps with the Trundle, with the Syndra, with the Ziggs, against every team until this game. Like, they got away with this nonsense against SKT. They got away with this nonsense in quarters and in groups. And it's like, and then so pulling this in Game 5, when it's won them games against other, like, good teams getting up to this, is really confidence in knowing their style, and then just getting punished for it by having it in Game 5 here. And it turns out that it's also the game where their pick ban and the picks they were afraid of shaped up so Viper gets to play Aphelios, which might be and they give the Kennen to Flandre. And like, this combo might have just been an absolute death knell in how they assembled it, as far as like how those two players specifically performed in this game, stepping up from some of the prior games in this series. Because like, Viper had been pretty quiet until Game 4, and Flandre had been really struggling without the Graves on the top side of the map. And so suddenly in Game 5, they actually pick a weak side capable champion for Flandre. They still lock a hyper carry for Viper, and they just run away with this one because of like the power in like showing up at the right time yet again in like this EDG narrative of like, they peaked exactly at the right point in this series, even with Game 4. And it really like put it so Damwon didn't have time to adjust or adapt anymore, since they lost that Game 1.
But letting both components through, like if you're giving something like a Kennen, which has like an execution, like there's really one way to successfully play Kennen, and you're giving Flandre an easy way out to look really good when you give him that character, when he wasn't performing bad. So, and then you give Viper Aphelios, which is like they won. They just won with the Aphelios prior, and they knew what that power had. I think it was a good strategy to go something comfortable for having this disengage comp, but they had to let one of those be prioritized as far as like banning it out, or something had to happen. But they let too many good components over to EDG to seal the deal on that.
Second round pick ban is hard,
yes.
Right? Because it's like, because if you look at their last two bans in that game, they saw that no junglers were picked first 3 picks, which is outrageous in this game 5. So EDG bans both lethality junglers. They see this happening. They ban the Viego out, and then they have a decision point because EDG still has their mid laner pick available, and they've got their jungler pick left. And so because of that, they ban out the Viego and the LeBlanc, and it's like, and that leaves them with the Xin Zhao and the Zoe pick again, which is really good into what they're rocking, and is very good against these disengaged poke comps for either damage mitigation with the Xin Zhao ult or Zoe's super long range, which can actually damage you outside the range of your pillar and your Ziggs bomb and your nonsense. So it turned out like that their second round of ban like maybe could have been better, but it's so hard to like figure out even what the appropriate thing is in the moment when you're going into this after you've already locked 3 picks in.
Yeah, what was the pick order for EDG? They locked. Was it?
It was the Aphelios and
was it Aphelios, Zoe?
They had Aphelios, Rakan, and they had Aphelios, Rakan, and Kennen in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean it.
I think it was Graves, Aphelios, Rakan.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really it's really hard. They got pinched. That's kind of absurd.
And then so then they picked I think they picked the Ziggs and the Leona in round 1 as the other 2 to wrap up bot lane.
Yeah, I just think the Viego ban probably wasn't the right call. But I guess it didn't really matter at that point when you already have Aphelios and Kennen locked in.
Well, when you look at it, JJ has looked great on his picks and has looked very uncomfortable on other things. So they're thinking...
We're going to question the thing here. We're questioning the Rise ban.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had answers. Because what are you afraid of? Are you really afraid of the Rise into Syndra?
Well, it was before the Syndra was locked, right? So Syndra was second round.
It's the Rise. The Rise was second ban, first phase.
Well,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like when you're banning Rise, why? What are you concerned?
They didn't. Well, they wanted to force a LeBlanc ban, is like a lot of what it was.
Okay.
Because Rise was their number 1 LeBlanc answer. But then with the way the rest of the bans shook out, they didn't end up EDG didn't end up picking LeBlanc. LeBlanc went unpicked in the first 3 picks for both teams because neither one was willing to risk it blunt.
EDG had better priority things to pick, though. We just talked about what their first 3 picks were. Why would you pick anything else? Like this is the problem. Like if you don't ban Rise and just fucking ban Aphelios there, like you were doing at the start of the series, like bans in game 2, Dom 1 bans Aphelios, Nami, Jarvan. Just do that again. That exact thing right there.
Yeah. Yeah, the Rise. Yeah, big good question mark right there. Wow.
Like because if you look at the other side, EDG in game 2 banned Yuumi, TF, Lee Sin. In game 5 banned Yuumi, TF, Lee Sin. Like just ban the Aphelios instead of the Rise.
And then that would have put them in a better spot. Especially since, like, in Game 2, they then banned out Viper's next 2, like, S-tier champions immediately afterwards with the Xayah ban and the Ezreal ban, because they knew they did not want that nonsense interfering with their comp.
Oh, yeah, and, like, they push him all the way down to Kai'Sa in that game, too, and that's part of why they win the game. Where, like, you give up both Aphelios and Kennen. If you give one of the 2, I think you can find a way back into the game. But you just gave so much comfort over to EDG, like, I question the Rise ban. Like that's where this looked like it started to fall apart.
Yeah.
But all that said, EDG is a world champion.
Rightly so.
Hell yeah. Like
Flandre.
Absolutely well.
Flandre world champion.
There you go. Go back and look at the archives of Reaction Time and Eric talking about Flandre, and now we're here. Imagine, look at us.
Just go look at his Leaguepedia page. Like, look at the teams and things that he has played through. Listen to our episode last week about the ridiculous things he did in past splits. That dude has had an awesome career, and for him to end it with a him to get a world championship as a part of it, like, it's amazing. Like, it's super duper cool.
Yeah, because he's not old by any means, right?
He's just been, I mean, this is his 7th year playing pro. Like, there's a line you get to with these guys where if they've been playing since 2015, that's a long time at this point.
Oh,
like
that's 7 years. Hold rough. Okay, hold on.
7 seasons.
Jeez.
And like, I think Nako's first year is 2015 as well. Like, I think they've both been playing in the LPL for 7 seasons, which means they're minimum 24, 25. Like,
I guess that is the end game. Holy.
in esports talk, that's up there.
Woof. We're getting to X-Smithy levels.
No, we're going to talk about old North American players in a bit. Don't you worry. How did you enjoy the opening ceremony and the theatrics of the event, Steven?
I didn't watch it. I've watched it prior. I've watched it now. I think it was very good. I have some question marks. I really like Arcane a lot. I think this was a lot of all in on advertising for it when I had hoped for something more focused on the esport and the history of esports. That is a very personal bias. I really like the prestige that Worlds has and a homage that it can pay to like why we got here. Why is World so popular? Why is League of Legends esports probably objectively the most successful esports? And I didn't see that respect to the history in that opening ceremony as much as I did like watch our show, which I like the show. I'm glad they're advertising it, but I time and place. Hot take.
Eric.
I like having Imagine Dragons and or other major bands still doing the opening ceremony, even if they're trapped in Iceland or whatever. Like, that's sick.
You want to feel
like,
old? Last time Imagine Dragons played a world championship final, it was 2013. Steven was my employee.
Wow. Yeah.
Steven, how many kids did you have then, Steven? Was it 0? Was it 0 kids?
I'm being flamed live on television. Yes, I had 0 kids. I have I guess doubled the amount of children since that time.
Even
That's how KDA is calculated anyway.
Even how many of your siblings were still my students in 2013?
A majority. That is not okay. That is a personal attack on my character.
We go way back.
Whoa! Oh my god, that was a completely different. That was a different era. Wow.
Yep, 2013.
That's
what I appreciated. It's like having Imagine Dragons back in the fold after all these years is pretty fun.
I kind of miss the I definitely miss it being live though. Like, man, like as cool as the transition is from the remix of Burn It All Down with the sphere to the teams with the sphere opening to reveal the trophy, that happening with no audience is just like misses a lot. It really does. Like, that would have been much better if there was like any hype going on besides like these players very clearly trying to not lose their cool due to the fact that this like orb is opening next to them and there's like smoke and like music blaring everywhere. Because you could tell like all that was going through their minds is like, I can't forget my pathing level 1. I can't forget my pathing level 1. And they're up here as this is happening.
The thing that kills me is this should have been in China. And the opening ceremony from the Bird's Nest is still what I show people who don't buy that esports is a real big deal thing. because that's like, and that wasn't even a full house of the Bird's Nest, but it's like this is the spectacle that is the standard, and it's not going to be like this every year. It's not going to be like this during a pandemic, but that is the spectacle. And imagining what it would have been like for EDG to win a world championship in a stadium in China, I just
That's flipping cars over
sucks.
level of hype.
Being robbed of that sucks because
Yes.
that you don't get that back.
No. I do want to say quickly, in comparison to the integration of footage and live action, the art style of Arcane and the integration of like actors or performers within the style looked really good. And shame on last year's Worlds with the KDA stuff and how bad that looked. It's like, oh, so you can do it. You just are choosing not to. And I don't want to say like, oh, well, that was an AR experience with like live action stuff. No, like aesthetically, the KDA stuff looked like ass next to real people, where the Arcane stuff and the integration look really good. So when you go back to a live performance with AR stuff, because you're gonna do it because you're doing that tech showing, make sure you're aesthetically aligning it into this caliber, because that looked really good. I was actually very impressed.
Also, while we're giving shout outs to the experience, God bless Atlas. I'm so glad he got to do this. It's like, not only is it the dude has been casting at a high level professionally in one league or another for about as long as some of these guys have been playing. He was the perfect guy for this. He's casted EDG in the LPL. He's been casting the LCK for years. And for all of the LCK casters to finally get this opportunity and for him to get the chance to do play-by-play at the World Final is a tremendous and well-deserved honor. The cast was awesome. The desk was awesome. Cajal did a great job. Like, that side of this was as good as it possibly could have been.
Yes, like it was a very enjoyable experience all around.
Always, like, I have been watching Atlas and a lot of the former OPL broadcasters for a really long time at this point, and to see any of them get their ups like this is awesome. So I'm always gonna give those props because they deserve it. So love to see that. He's also a huge weeb and tweets about Genshin Impact, so props to my boy.
I was about to say a lot of people involved with Riot are pretty weeb, so
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a standout trait.
It's almost like they make their game at least somewhat to appeal to weebs, at least a little bit. Try more.
I will.
I question the Riot employees who aren't weebs. It's like, what's
That's pretty sus,
what's your
my
angle?
guy.
Pretty sus.
Here's an imposter among us.
Anyway, speaking of things that are animated but not anime, should we talk about Arcane?
Yes, we have to. That's the only option.
Here is the official disclaimer. There will be spoilers for Act 1 of Arcane.
Spoilers.
At points in the podcast. If you haven't watched Act 1 of Arcane, turn off this podcast and go fucking watch it.
We'll see you next time. Make sure you buy funky merch and like and subscribe. This is the end of the episode for you.
Back after you watch it. Only it's like 2 hours. Just pause and come back to us. You'll
bookmark it. Come back. But buy merch. You know what? Buy merch. Go watch Arcane. And then come back.
We'll even put our timestamp where you can come back in the description so that you can just click on it and come back when you're done.
Future Steven. It's about at the 37 mark. Thank you. You're welcome.
Making Future Steven do a lot of work here.
Future Steven. Okay, Arcane.
So with that, did either of you guys watch the live premiere on Twitch, or did you just watch it on Netflix? I know that I watched it on Netflix the day after.
I watched it when it came up on Netflix. I didn't do the Twitch stuff. I'm glad that was a really good experience. I'm not a huge fan of that. Like I'm kind of like I want to be immersed in my lair and watching it and experiencing it.
So what I find interesting about it is it's number one, an opportunity for people who don't have a Netflix sub to watch it. Number two,
Nice.
for people that appreciate the whole Twitch culture thing, go off, I guess. Number three, it makes it more TV in the traditional TV sense, right? Like, TV used to be appointment viewing. You had your time of the think back to like when even not this isn't that long ago now, but like Game of Thrones, right? Like Sunday nights at 8, people were appointment viewing. I remember what my Twitter timeline turned into during Game of Thrones. Like it was appointment, like we are on the couch watching this at 8 p.m. every Sunday night. This is what we're doing. So for something that's only happening on Netflix to be like this premieres at this time, we are going to broadcast it live at this time, and it'll be on streaming. I don't hate that idea. Like, and I'm glad they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it again for both of the next 2 weeks as well. So, like,
You
I
haven't
think
looked at
there's
the
a
time
lot of,
then.
What?
You haven't looked at the time in for Central. It's at like 2 a.m. our time.
Is that 9 again?
No, it's a different time.
Oh, so they're doing the Disney time. That the Disney Plus shows drop at 2 a.m. I've done that one.
You yucky.
That's like the Friday morning at 2 a.m. drop is the normal Disney Plus show time, and that annoys me.
But
deeply.
why? Ew, yeah, yikes.
Because it's midnight Pacific is why. I'll tell you that right now. I know that one.
Yeah, it's midnight.
It's midnight Pacific.
What's Game of Thrones?
Yeah, well, it's not for you when you're older. It's got too much naughty stuff for you. There's a sex scene in the first 10 pages of the book, so I assume it's in like the first episode.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never watched the show. I just know it's a book.
Oh, it's a book. Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of Game of Thrones.
You get through it. You should get ready for Watt on Amazon Prime. But anyway, we should go back to Arcane.
Arcane is hella good.
So yeah, Arcane. Anyway, so you, Steven, you alluded to this already, and I want to start with you. Talk to us about the art style.
Okay, so the art style is a great video game. Well, it's timeless in the fact that that's what Riot went for when they did the renovation of Summoner's Rift. This is really good marketing integration. Like, it really, really works as a stylized, timeless animation. That is a huge achievement for Riot, and that is absurd for them to already achieve that. Like, this is something that Pixar has been going for a long time. That's like something that like 2D animation. I'm putting it in the caliber of like claymation or something that Leica Studios would do with their stop motion style. This will age so beautifully, and the fact that they're achieving the numbers and the prestige already is kind of absurd for a video game production. Like, this is like we're thinking about like the most successful video game adaptation to film was Detective Pikachu, and then there's this like the huge difference between the caliber of production between those two, because you can't talk about the World of Warcraft film, you can't talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, but that's the genre we're dealing with.
The ones that people put up there are the recent ones, the Dota TV show and the Castlevania TV show, both of which have been relatively well received.
Castlevania is amazing. Animation in the 2D, like, borderline anime style has a different kind of caliber as far as aging and appeal. So when you're opting into a 3D, because like League of Legends could have easily gone into an anime style and had this same franchise in that, it would not have been as well received. There is a different kind of like acceptance.
So here's my response.
Mm-hmm.
They still could.
They still could.
That's the thing that Riot can unlock here if they choose to. So credit, we've given all this credit to Riot. Credit to Studio Fortiche, first of all.
Yes.
Who are the animators that have done with Riot, has worked with them on a lot of the music video stuff in the past. We've seen their work before. This is a tremendous work of art from them. And Riot had a lot of the creative control, but Fortiche are the animators that have made this happen over the years, and all of the credit in the world to them. Now, Riot has said this week in interviews that, like, this is the thing that could open the door to other things. You would not expect that they're going to only use one studio for all of the things we're going to do. Do we really think that Riot isn't going to make a Star Guardians anime if this works?
Especially since Avatar has their own studio now and they've worked with them in the past.
They're going to make a Star Guardian anime and it's going to be awesome. And I'm here for it. Like, really, let's go.
But I don't want to deviate too far from the point that, like, the broad appeal that this type of 3D animation has allows it to have this huge reach. So, like, at the end of the day, this is glorified advertising for their game. And so this is going to be a huge, like, stimulant as far as re-engaging their old player base that maybe have fallen out or coming back, and just having broad appeal that you're going to get some trickle down from that. Nonetheless, they're going to make money from the fact that it's already in contention with Squid Games. Like, Netflix is writing checks right now. They're like, please, like, more of that right now. And, like, they've really cemented themselves. A borderline almost doesn't matter how the rest of this goes. Just with those 3 episodes, they've really cemented themselves a future.
And the conversation around it that I've seen in assorted places, because I've been trying not to just look at the League of Legends side of things, right, is that it's just good television.
Correct.
Like, take out everything else about it. It's just good television. And so, like, discussion starts from there. You have, in episode 1, the world building and the character building of Vi and Powder and Clegor and, other
Milo.
boy.
Milo.
Yeah. Milo. And the worlds above and below that they're running in. And for someone like, for example, as I said, I watched a chunk of this with my wife, who knows almost nothing about League of Legends except the bits of esports that she's watched with me over the years. And she had an account that she played like 3 games on and was terrible at it. But to establish the world that this is set in of Piltover and Zaun, I loved the show they did of the world of Piltover through the lens of the gang exploring the rooftops and running across. Like, it reminded me of, I think, the very first Assassin's Creed trailer that ever came out like 13, 15 years ago, of like, you're running across the rooftops of Ancient City X and you see the scenery and the wide views of it. The first big wide view we get of the city of Piltover is one of those, like, this is our setting, this is where we're at. Nothing to do with Runeterra, nothing to do with League of Legends. This is where we're at for this. And I thought that was extremely well done. Same for, probably 20 minutes into the episode, their journey down the sewer into Zaun, the first walk down the street in Zaun, the Yordle hooker, everybody's favorite part, sets the other side of the coin, right? Like, it's the setting that's like, you're making a foundation for a show from scratch, not from what people know. This is setting it from scratch for everybody. So that's my first thing of, like, this just makes me good television, is you've set your scene really well in episode 1.
There's so much intelligence in that as well. So you're taking probably the most familiar setting in all of League of Legends canon to reach a broad audience. Like, everybody can get, like, the upper echelons of society. Like you just look at this, like, bright, like, dystopian utopia, like, higher, like, aristocratic city. Everyone can instantly get that. And then you do that transition into, like, the drug lord slums area, which is also really familiar. So it's just, like, really intelligent world building, and, like, bringing in a broad audience, like keeping in with that core, like it's the best decision they could have made as far as storytelling within this universe. That is all, like, you could have started like with the Rune Wars, you could have started with like the Noxian Empire or Ionia or any of those things. They have a little bit more abstraction than something like the Piltover Zon conflict. That's a lot more palpable for people that don't have any kind of like context, and it's just smart.
Eric, you haven't talked in a while.
I'm just going through my like GIF library in my head of favorite moments from this, you know? Yeah.
I don't. I'm actually missing it. Do they do a think meme?
Well, no, it's the this is my angry face. When I do this,
Oh yeah, shut
stop
up
talking. Yeah.
That's my favorite GIF from the whole thing. I'm going to use that all the time. I love that GIF. I also, as a nerd, like going wide scale on it. The music is so good.
Yeah.
The background stuff, the orchestral soundtrack stuff, the original songs they've created. The Imagine Dragons song is fine. It's Imagine Dragons doing a song, and I'm good with it.
Playground.
I have only skipped the opening once. The song at the end of episode 2 is awesome and so stylistically interesting as a choice to set the vibe of the disparate parts of that scene with Powder at the bar, with Vander, and with Vi making her choices separately. I loved the jarringness of how different that was to some of the action that was happening on screen. And I'm so excited to see, like, we know Christian Linka Preco, who is one of the lead screenwriters and showrunners for this, came from Riot's music department, right? Like, that was his bag before this. And you can tell, right? Like, that there's a musician behind the music of this. And I love it. I nerded out about it. I'm so excited to see how much more they develop it as they do character themes and more stuff and dig deeper into this stuff in the next 2 arcs musically. Loved that.
Isn't he being like very bold on Twitter too, being like, y'all, like, this is just like, we just barely cracked the faucet on like what the next like 2 sessions have. So like the fact that he's being pretty like, you like that? Like, there's more, and there's a lot more. So prep yourselves, gentlemen.
It's been fun reading the media, like the traditional Hollywood media, trying to figure this out. There was a really good article in the LA Times earlier this week about kind of some of the development process and how long this has been in the works at Riot, and how they're like, we chose to just pick 2 rioters to do it because rioters know how to do Riot stuff. Fuck choosing a Hollywood executive to do it. And so far,
Yup.
hang up job. You did it right. They're like, these guys have no show writing experience and have never worked in television ever, and just made a show that is charting #1 on Netflix worldwide.
Bonkers.
It's actually really good for like the scene in general. Like, one of the common complaints on interviews with people from that, like from the Hollywood scene or from major productions, is like just how expensive like doing the shows is, and like how you need to find writers, and then if the producers don't like what the writers turn out, then you need to find new writers, and then it's like this cycle of paying oodles of money in order to produce content. And it turns out that if you're already paying like an in-house studio team in order to do stuff, that then you can just continue paying only to do your TV show. It's like, why not just do that? So like, this is really good stuff for like getting more content even from other studios as far as this goes, and getting more original content in different settings that then might not go through the same huge delay, tedious process.
If only Blizzard could have not been a cesspool, they might have the same opportunity.
I haven't gone searching
that
for a
one.
Blizzard reaction to this, but boy, there's been some comments comparing this to the World of Warcraft movie that haven't been favorable to that.
And I'm not like a huge fan of Hollywood in general. So
Well, and they're like, why can't we do this for Overwatch? And I'm like, well,
They could have.
they could have.
not now.
A little late now.
Yeah, like they're gonna be lucky to publish a game. Like in my opinion.
What if favorite reality? There was an Overwatch movie in the works, but the main character happened to be named McCree. And then that's where they're at right now.
Bwah, 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 bwah. Well, your first mistake was making a movie. I'm not a huge fan of movies anymore. I think micro series or like I don't think you have to make movies anymore. Sorry.
Um, so the character moments, right? Like you have Powder ruining everything.
Triple kill.
You have yep. You have
It's not quite
Vi.
legendary.
You have Vi punching the hell out of a whole bunch of people. You have Vi almost willingly giving herself up, or so she thinks, at the end of episode 2. You have Vander talking his way through how to figure stuff out. Like I think Vander, like, just as this act alone, I think Vander's decisions and conversations with people are some of the most interesting parts of it as its individual thing. Obviously, Vi and Jinx are going to continue to develop as it goes, but Vander and Silco conversation I think was very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's to develop every character so thoroughly in such a concise amount of time is really something to be commended. And I think it's so. I don't know if I want to deep dive into this per se, but like, are we just like accepting that he's Warwick? I think it was alluded to a little too heavy-handed to just not accept it.
The Singed being right there too, like it's just if we look at the existing lore and all of the nods they gave to it, and
Hound.
just how all the situation seems to kind of fit how it might work. It seems a little inevitable, but
Okay,
we'll
like
have
as
to
long as
see.
we accept it for this conversation, I'm cool with it because like you have a great like nurtured backstory and for a very impactful like because it's a nice mirroring of like Jinx's descent into madness, and Vander's going to have to go through that same thing through different situations, of course, but like to take such a character that is like has a little bit of a troubled past but is highly regarded and looked upon fondly by other characters, and then to like twist him into what I'm assuming will be some sort of like antagonist. That's good. I like that, especially when you're talking about like the gun kind of the gun hanging on the fireplace. You see it in the first act, and then you'll be fired in the third act kind of like situation. We have that here if we wanted a really nice cliffhanger to the third act, which would be the last 3 sets of videos of doing the reveal of Vander as Warwick. That's that good stuff.
Chekhov's gauntlet? Is that yeah?
Gun. It's the gun. Whatever. The
It's the
story
gun, but
thing.
it's
I make
Chekhov's
pictures
gauntlet,
for a
you know?
living. I know the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. It's good story writing for unfounded talent. That was the roundabout way of me making that point of like you have a very good.
So the point that I want to follow up on before I have to get up and tend to my son is do you wish you'd been able to watch this without knowing the lore?
You go, Eric, first.
Well, I don't really know the lore all that much, so I had a blast. And then so I kind of went into it with the I don't know if this is new or this is existing stuff that they were building on top of. And I really liked it until it got super dark suddenly, and I was like, ooh boy, man. like the end of episode 3 was very brutal, and it was very well done too from a certain perspective, because like a part of what made it so crushing is that Jinx didn't even really know until like super after the fact that there was any tragedy affiliated with her, like, huge emotional rush of finally succeeding. And also the fact that they made the explosions tied to these like magical Skarner people's rocks like so incredibly beautiful, right? Like, so it's like, so here she is falling from the sky, almost like that scene in Cowboy Bebop. I almost heard um, the Maria playing Ave Maria playing as she's falling almost, and then everything just comes tragically crashing down. Like, that was brutal. Yeah, but yeah, so I kind of went into it with this assumption that I don't know anything, and I really enjoyed it that way. It actually kind of annoyed me when I'm sitting next to someone else and they're saying he's Warwick, or maybe he's the one who's Singed, and it's like I don't really care. Like, just don't show me that cat dying. That's all I ask.
They didn't. They
Yeah.
to definitely not maybe Twitch. Everybody's like excited about that. And I think that's like, again, like this is like an artisanal piece. There's just enough sprinkling of like the lore aficionados are getting some like breadcrumbs, or like, here, you wanted it, here it is, without just being like over the head with like, this is some lore dump, like this is a reference. Like, so I think it was very well done as far as like appeasing the people that know a lot. And there's some like little nuance things that are like retconned as far as like official lore goes, but like Riot's not really super tied to their official lore. My internal justification is just like everything in game falls under like the legends status, so anything in their lore is just hearsay or like what has been told about like these legendary heroes. So there's going to be some oral interpretation as far as what actually happened, and what we're seeing in the cinematic universe, which is coming because like they'd be foolish not to do it, is the actual events as they occurred, or vice versa if you wanted to do that too. Whatever mental aerobics you would have to do to justify it. As a pretty good lore buff, like none of this was offensive to me, and it was actually really pleasant.
So the flip side of this, which I do feel needs acknowledged, considering how much time they spent on it, what did you think of the Jace Victor Heimerdinger section of the events of the show?
It was great. I love the plot. I'm a little upset with Heimerdinger being kind of like an anti-progress in some regards. Like, he's like too smart almost. It's like I kind of prefer for Heimerdinger to be more like deranged, I was expecting a more deranged Heimerdinger. And so personally, and that's just from in-game quotes, not from like, lore or anything else. But yeah, so that was just interesting.
I think what I'm hoping that we see is that, like, so Heimerdinger's arc as far as his lifetime is just like youthful exploration, and then like stuffy, full of himself, and then he kind of, with what Jace and Victor start doing, he kind of comes off of the high horse, which is the point of like the Zon Piltover. Is just like the people need, like everybody needs to be pulled up and dragged down a little bit to an equal plane. So like there's some nice situations that they can create with Heimerdinger's character specifically, as far as like what Jace does. The progress day is going to be really good for all the people that like Echo and those kind of things going forward. That's a big component of this, and I would anticipate that we get more of the deranged, like a science Heimerdinger in the next wave of episodes. I think you'll be very happy with that if my assumptions are correct.
And it's going to be like the contrast of Heimerdinger to the other members of the Piltover Council, I think, is one of the elements that I'm most interested to see, because you really have this like really clear element of there's going to be some turmoil within the council of 5 or 7 or however many it is over how this goes and how the sides are going to be taken, how some of these other characters that we don't know as well are going to make their choices. Obviously, we saw the one council member who's like, "Hey, I found y'all doing this, but I'm good with it. Let's do it." And I'm interested to see how that piece of this develops because I think that could be really interesting. And obviously, like we know with background knowledge that Victor gets to a very different place than he is at right now. Eventually, and I'm curious to see if we're going to go too much in that direction too soon.
If they do what I'm hoping they do. Are we going to consider, like, I don't want to spoil stuff by just, like, assuming correctly. If that's kind of, like, something we don't want to do, I don't want to do that. So just, like, consensus. Can I guesstimate without, like...
You mentioned Progress Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you thinking Progress Day is a next act?
I think, yes, Progress Day should be in the next act, not the final act. I think the final act will have some major conflict with something different. But Grayson, the Piltoverian chief or whatever, her, the one that died by the Decker monster, I believe she is in direct relation to Camille, who we will see soon, if I'm guessing right, and her connection to not LeBlanc, the lead council, the schmuck, older, bearded council person. They haven't revealed his name because if they reveal his name, I think it kind of like solidifies what I'm thinking. He's a pawn of the Gray Lady and the organization headed by LeBlanc, which will key up the Ionian and Noxus Demacia conflict for the next phase of Arcane.
Yeah, I didn't worry about anyone being LeBlanc until you brought up that plot, and now I just think everyone is LeBlanc in the entire show. They're going to go into next act, and it's not actually Jinx, it's LeBlanc disguised as Jinx.
LeBlanc could be
fighting anyone. LeBlanc disguised as Vi.
Two LeBlancs.
What's even happening?
Sorry. I gave you an out.
All right, that's a lot of Arcane talk. I will say, I've done a good bit of reading on and off. My favorite thing that I've read so far about Act 1, Emily Rand, who has appeared on the LCS broadcast as an analyst often this year, appeared on the World's broadcast, also is
anime blogger.
An anime blogger in her spare time, and she wrote a really interesting piece about the elements of art history that were used in the creation of the worlds of Piltover and Zaun. That was a really, really interesting read about the specific design choices that Riot made as it relates to Art Deco styling. And you should go read it. It's really good and not something I would ever have thought of looking for in the series, but she provided a whole bunch of examples of the historical examples and what was done in the show with them, and it was awesome to read. So go check that out. You can find it on her Twitter and assorted places because she's a fabulous writer, and that's the kind of stuff that, like, she's great at her job as an LCS analyst, but she's also one of my favorite just writers to read. And getting her on this content was awesome. So go check that out. I don't want to talk about TSM.
Next time on.
No, not next time. I just don't want to talk about TSM. Fuck 'em. That, like, the 2-minute thing I will have here is Reginald and Doublelift are acting like a high school trumpet section, and it deeply annoys me. And for two of the most elder statesmen of the LCS, they are acting like spoiled children, and it's really obnoxious and bad for the league.
Them walking away is really good for the industry. They're from a bygone era.
Reggie's not going to leave.
He needs to take a less...
No, he's not.
I didn't say
Why
he
is
should.
He talking, then?
He
Why
needs
is he
to.
providing
He
any
needs
fuel
to
to this
not.
fire?
He needs
He's
to
only
not.
going to actually take a major role now. Like, with Bjergsen leaving, they have no head coach at the moment. It's him and Parth. So it's like he's going to be basically acting head coach for the team next split.
Might as well just play mid lane. Honestly, if he was that player, I could like not commend, but I could accept his clown behavior. But as like the head of a company, hire a PR person and filter yourself. Foolishness.
I'll not make the obvious riff on his hiring process, but I will talk about how that like the fact that TSM signing Doublelift remains like one of the worst possible decisions in organization history, not just because of the direct interpersonal relationship issues that signing had, but also due to the fact that both of them are absolutely like tragic at public relations and at speaking their mind in places when they probably shouldn't, and at leaving their like their chat running while live streaming events, and hence like broadcasting shit that they should in no way have going on in life. And it's like,
can we also just bring up the fact that they have dated the same woman who happens to be one of TSM's brand managers?
I think she left now. Not that it has any value to this conversation, but
maybe we only know that she maybe left because Doublelift leaked it on his stream today. By the way,
oh my god, I thought that was old news. Oh my god.
It's like there was so much tragic that happened with that signing, like with like Lena being in charge of the team, signing Doublelift into this org, like them not seeing this train wreck coming on that signing is like absolutely ludicrous. That none of them, and all three of them had perfect visibility that this was going to happen from the beginning. As it went through. Like, and all this does, with all this fist fighting between them, is makes me think of other conspiracy theories about how this org has massively fucked up. It makes me think back to this last year and think to myself, maybe Bjergsen didn't retire and transition to coach because he wanted to coach. He transitioned to coach to change his contract so that he could exit the org this year without a buyout, so that he could leave without a team having to pay Reggie more money, or Reggie being able to upcharge as much as possible to prevent him going to another roster. Him transitioning to coach was the easiest way for him to exit after he became an owner of this organization, which is ludicrous that anyone would want to do this. Like, you had free money for the rest of your life, and you have left in order to play League of Legends again.
So, like, to read the summary of Doublelift's second stream on this, after he first streamed and made a shit show yesterday, which Reggie responded to, one of the bullet points made by the person that posted this, I have not watched this video myself and I'm not fucking going to, is that he implies that Bjergsen left the organization because of Reggie, so there's probably some fruit to that.
Oh yeah, and it's like, anyone leaving TSM is because of Reggie. Anyone doing anything at TSM is because of Reggie, because he is in control. Like, that is his thing. He has hands on the reins. He is going back into a head coaching role, most likely. I'm saying this even though they're probably going to hire a coach, but like, especially with all the major players leaving and them talking about a pseudo-developmental roster featuring Huni and Spica, like Reggie will be in charge of whatever this team does. And that's like got to be one of the things people need to know going into next season. And I wonder if their brand value has just been completely trashed at this point.
I wonder if Riot has to step in now, or lolesports, or whatever the legal entity is.
I think they're more worried about stepping in with whatever CLG is doing personally. But like, you know, it's
valid.
You guys haven't even hit the team that Riot had to make a statement about an hour ago yet.
Oh, Cloud9 doing money troubles? Like, that's nothing new. They let that slide all the time. FlyQuest's existence is based off of letting C9 slide through stuff. I don't want to hear that.
It's not even mostly C9's fault. It was did you hear this story?
Is it the G2 preventing VIT from...
G2 and C9 agreed a deal that C9 would not sell to Fnatic for 3 years. And Riot made a statement saying, like, well, we didn't know that. Don't do it again, but I guess we can't stop you now.
Yep.
That also happened today.
Yeah. Like
So,
Riot has
wait,
like
that's against the so making an agreement that you won't trade a player to another team
any
within
players.
okay is like against the league rules is what
It's
I'm hearing.
not.
It
Okay.
is now.
It's going to be.
Okay.
They need to be
'Cause-
more hands-on. Period.
Good luck with that. Like, a part of me wonders if Vulcan looking like shit in Worlds, going back on the conspiracy theory train, is that, one of the things that's come out over the years is that most league transfers in NA and EU are decided before Worlds is over. So most players know they're leaving or are free agents in the World
I
Championship.
don't remember where I read it, but it was said that Perks told the team before quarters that he was leaving.
And so
Foolish.
a part of me wonders if Vulcan performing pretty poorly at Worlds when he had been one of their top performers during the regular season is related to the fact that they knew this team was falling apart before they even got there, and that just lends credence to this. Where it turns out there's so many practice problems where the teams that aren't at Worlds specifically start shaking the boat in the middle of this tournament because they have to get a jump start on it. And it's so much is about this. It's absolutely nuts. Fortunately, it seems like this year, from what I've heard, that the general perception is that the money bubble has popped, where even though TL is going to drop a ludicrous amount of money on a team, that the other orgs are at their limit for what they're willing to do.
Man, I'd love to hear how much EG is paying for Inspired before I feel comfortable confirming that at all. Is the problem I have right there, because Rogue should be charging EG an arm and a leg for Inspired, and I'm curious to see how that's going to work.
Or maybe to rephrase, the new brands who feel like they have made smart, to kind of quote LS from Hotline League earlier this week. He blames a lot of problems in Western League of Legends or globally on non-specialists hiring specialists to do jobs. And this isn't just about players, it's about staffing. Where if you hire shit staff, or you hire staff without understanding why you're hiring them or what you're hiring them for or their credentials, you end up having repeat hires of cyclical figures who aren't good. Or you pay ludicrous amount of money to swindlers who have no clue what they're doing. And it's if you're EG and you have seen a massive amount of success from your supporting staff, does that buy you in now? And so are we going to see 100 Thieves and EG continue to spend because they feel they have a better solution at a high level in the org? It could be a huge mistake, but them after hiring good supporting staffs that are working, as opposed to TSM or another C9 fiasco or whatever CLG is going to do, makes me feel better about where things are going. I think CLG is hiring back ThinkCard as coach, which is
they announced
which
that.
is announced.
That's
and
done.
And that's I have liked ThinkCard as an analytical figure backing up these teams, but they have other issues that they're going to need to solve. And it's there's so many organizational issues, especially since he's gone and come back now. What's the growth goal? Or is there no growth goal? And it's so hard to tell now. It's absolutely ludicrous.
I mean, all you have to do is hire one person to solve your whole support staff issue. Whipple's girlfriend.
And that's why Team Liquid win goals.
They have Whipple's girlfriend. It's easy.
Man, I just for reference, while Eric has been talking, I've been checking the front page of the League Reddit, and there have been two new TSM response from assorted people posts since we started recording this podcast. One of them is Speaka memeing, but
good on him.
He puts his milk in his bowl before the cereal and got ratioed on Twitter for it.
Ooh.
And then put a twit longer up that said clarification, which in the current setting is hilarious. So, well memed, sir. Um, I'd also like not that I particularly want to defend CLG, but the fact that the top comments last night for Reggie's extensive response to Doublelift were comparing it to the Dunzo Manifesto. Speaking of the ancient texts,
The
um,
tomes.
I remember reading the Google Doc, the 13-page Google Doc of the Dunzo Manifesto, and it wasn't quite that. But the fact that that even is brought up in this context, I think, is relevant.
Legendary.
Shout out to Link wherever you are these days.
Fallen comrade.
So yeah, that and the perks mess here are the two big stories that we have knowledge of.
Yeah, I saw Perks and Fnatic exchanging tweets this morning. That is funny with context.
Um, yeah, the official ruling is we want to clear up any confusion related to the G2 C9 transfer of perks that took place last offseason. As reported, the transfer agreement includes a provision preventing C9 from freely transferring perks to Fnatic. Onward transfer restrictions are a novel issue within the professional LoL esports ecosystem. Our current rules governing player transfers do not explicitly prohibit restrictions on future transfers by the receiving team, so we will not penalize G2 and C9 for including such a clause in their agreement. However, as we recently communicated to G2, C9, and Fnatic, Riot does not intend to enforce the trade restriction and would recognize the transfer of perks to any team upon receipt of the appropriate paperwork in accordance with the league rules. The enforcement of the restriction is a private contractual manager between the teams to be resolved as appropriate in accordance with applicable law. So, Fnatic, if you want him, sue us. Going forward, we'll fix the rules. The end.
Bark.
The end, and that's what we'll end with. So next week we're going to talk about all this spice.
Yeah, this is going to be the whole episode.
Because Monday, the 15th of November, is when Riot's global free agency period does, in fact, actually open. I put together on the Notes app, just in case we didn't go an hour long talking about other stuff, a list of all the things that have been reported so far, which there are about 20 moves that have been reported thus far, including the entirety of the Team Liquid roster. I know.
Yay.
One of the either Dot or Upcomer is doing a big free agency show like they've done the last couple of years on Monday nights to hit all the big moves. If I remember how this has gone the last couple of years, a lot of shit's going to become official on Monday night. So when we record on Wednesday, we're going to know a lot about how stuff's going to look moving forward. Maybe not everything yet, but it does work rather like the NBA often does, in that a lot of stuff is ready to go at the deadline, and then it's just the official team announcements can come out. So we know a good bit about what stuff is going to look like, particularly for the higher profile openings, and we know more about the LEC than we do about the LCS right now. I will say there's a lot of known movements in the LEC across all 10 teams. Where in NA we've heard a lot about C9 and TL and a little bit about EG and not as much about the other teams. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out moving forward. We've got 5 days before this comes out, and it's clear that stuff's just going to keep heating up until Monday comes in. So I assume we're going to have a ton to talk about next week about free agency, and that's where it's going to go. We get to talk all about how stuff starts to look for next year. So with that, we're going to start to wrap up. Steven, you plugged it once before the spoiler section. Plug it again.
Merch. You can buy it at the Funky store, funky.store. Buy it there. You can get cool merch with nostalgic and video game references. It's really good. It's high quality, produced in St. Louis, so it's local to where most of us are, and you can buy it with your money.
Eric, what you been playing?
Well, I just won a game of TFT with Yordles, and that was fun. They they solve my problem. Like I love free stuff in these kinds of games. So in this expansion, there's like 4 different factions with free stuff. Like I have options again. What is this? I'm not just playing Fortune every round and losing terribly. So that's great. Other than that, enjoying the off season, playing some Civ or backseat gaming Civ, getting ready for a new year.
Steven, what you been playing?
I did make a very veiled attempt at TFT. I still don't know enough about it to enjoy it. We'll happily try it again. Still, just not sticking with me. We're also playing Halo on the channel for the first time. I've never played Halo before, so definitely check out that. It'll be over Eric's head, so Eric can point up at like the link to where Halo is. You can watch that series and the Poser series. So that'll be a happening.
I have also been playing TFT. I was in the same game that Eric placed first in. I placed fourth, which I was reasonably content with. I have been trying different things, and so far Chemtech has felt the most fun to me. But it is one of the things that I've appreciated about TFT is you kind of, as long as you find stuff that goes together and just like focus on a thing, you can kind of make most things work as long as you're not playing ranked and trying that hard, which is what I don't do. So I don't do that. I try very hard to avoid knowing TFT meta comps and usually stop playing about 3 weeks after a set release when people are only playing meta comps, because it frustrates me. But yeah, so I've been messing around with the new set and enjoying it just enough to take the edge off. But then these people started playing Civilization in Discord server, and I'm not gonna scratch that itch. I'm not gonna do it. It's a trap. I need to sleep sometime this week, and when I play Civ, we play in one sitting, which is why I don't play Civ very much.
Yeah, I have Civ for the Switch. I bought it on a whim, and I'm reminded of how long I actually loaned it out to someone, and they're like, "I'm giving this back now." This is a lot of time.
I spent a number of sleepless nights playing Civ 5 at various points in college and just after college, and have tried very hard to not go back down that road. But it's a great game. So that's about all we got. We'll be back with talking about free agency bullshit next week. All the good times. Click the links, buy the merch, support the podcast, watch Arcane. We'll probably also talk about Act 2 of Arcane next weekend.
Oh, absolutely, we will.
Definitely going to do it. We got a lot to do next week. It's going to be a busy show.
Absolutely.
So with that, we will catch y'all on the flip side. Deuces, this has been reaction time.